Namibians go to the polls tomorrow and Saturday in their presidential and parliamentary elections. Sentiment has it that Namibia's Southwest African People's Organization is set to win its 5th consecutive election landslide as a recession fails to dampen support for the movement that liberated the country. To take us through some of the issues, we are joined from Windhoek by Bill Limdecker from the Institute for Public Policy Research. Professor, thank you very much for joining us on Regional Roundup. As I said in the intro, many analysts believe it will be another landslide victory for the ruling party, and largely due to loyalist votes, as well as securing another term for the current president, Hifikepunye Pohamba. What's your take?
Yes, I think all the indications at this stage are that there are at least two stories. One is that SWAPO, the SWAPO party of Namibia, as they're now called, is likely to win very substantial majority and continue as a dominant one-party political process. The second side of the story is the question about what happens with opposition parties. That story looks a bit more interesting at the moment and is more news than a big SWAPO victory.
Take us through the significance of the opposition
maybe
parties.
I can just... very much like the South African case, there was a breakaway from SWAPO. There had been one earlier called the Congress of Democrats. That's the current official opposition back in 1999. But this is now a new breakaway, much like COPE, I think, in South Africa. About 2 years ago now, the Rally for Democracy and Progress split from SWAPO and created a new political party and quite a bit of excitement. There are some former high-ranking ministers and experienced SWAPO officials who went with the new party. They also seem to have interesting kinds of support. The big question, I think, for us has to do with Oshiwambo-speaking areas in the north-central part of Namibia. This is almost half of the population and has been a SWAPO stronghold. They typically get 90 to 95% of the vote in those areas. One of the subgroups of Oshiwambo speakers, the Kwanyama, are identified with this new political party. And so the question will be, does SWAPO lose this 90% majority in that area? President Pohamba is also Kwanyama, so it's not a sharp split. But if the opposition parties can begin to eat into that 90% majority, then they stand a chance perhaps to push SWAPO below the 2/3 majority, which is symbolically important, but so far hasn't been necessary in terms of changing the Constitution, with the exception in 1999 when they allowed a 3rd term for President Nyoma at that stage. But they haven't altered the Constitution otherwise, and the 2/3 majority is mostly symbolic.
Now, Professor, do the opposition parties really have economic policies that are very much different from the ruling party that will take the country forward?
Yeah, there's not much ideological difference among the parties, especially the leading parties. Everybody is sort of committed to a strong governmental role within a mixed economy and trying to develop the economy and diversify the economy. So there isn't really anything different there. The main difference, I think, would just be that the opposition parties think that they could do better, that they don't carry maybe some of the baggage that SWAPO does in terms of needing to reward their previous supporters. There's an issue of struggle children who are demanding jobs at the expense of perhaps others in the economy who are also unemployed. There's an issue of a new Veterans Administration, a ministry that came just this past year that is only servicing former Plan fighters in the liberation struggle. rather than the sort of reconciliation between the different warring factions that took place at independence in 1990. So, and then SWAPO has a tendency to, to a degree, to cover up some of the corruption issues, or at least to not to punish people who are engaged or caught in corrupt activities. And that's a bit of a problem that the opposition parties have been stressing as well.
Now, the government has set high goals, which include becoming an industrialized country within the next 20 years, as well as reducing unemployment to less than 5% from 36% at present. Are these attainable?
No. I mean, it is an ambitious goal, and it's always nice to have ambitious goals. The Bank of Namibia a year or so ago suggested that to meet those targets we would need to grow at about 11% a year, and that's much higher than we've grown at any of the past 20 years. So the target is ideal, but it's really quite far away. Namibia does very well in governance and policy terms on the various indexes, Mo Ibrahim and Governance Matters and Global Competitiveness, but we struggle in terms of implementation. There's still a severe gap of human resources on the public sector side and even on the private sector side, and implementation really is much slower and weaker than it would have to be to make really strong inroads toward that vision. Particularly the issues that are weaknesses for the government at the moment are unemployment. Again, like South Africa, we have about 35% official unemployment. Among youth and the so-called born-free generation, it might be as high as 60%. So SWAPO's strategy in past elections has been to rerun the 1989 election, that this is the liberation struggle. We've brought independence. We kicked the South African military out of the communal areas in the north.